This Wednesday evening, Thursday day, all the way until Thursday evening, Jews all around the world are going to gather together in synagogues to observe Yom Kippur. It's my all-time favorite holiday, better than Hanukkah, better than Passover, better than any of the other ones. This one is my all-time favorite. Now, if you know anything about Yom Kippur, you're probably thinking to yourself, it doesn't really sound like that much fun of a holiday as I recall. And you should know, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not a particularly fun holiday. It's not a festive one. There's not a festive meal. There's no food. There's no drink. No marital relations, right? You're not having any fun. What you are doing, though, is you're spending a lot of time in the synagogue for prayer. We have 5 prayer services on Yom Kippur, and you're doing a lot of introspection. You're examining your misdeeds. You are making plans for the future for how to correct those misdeeds. So, since it's not an especially fun holiday, and it's filled with a lot of prayer, a lot of introspection, a lot of hunger, a lot of thirst, a lot of, let's call it lack of comfort with your spouse, what makes it my favorite? Why do I like this holiday more than all the other ones, probably even combined? Do I just not enjoying life? Well, maybe, okay, but not for the reasons that you might think, all right? It goes beyond that. All throughout the year, we're taking care of our physical needs. We're taking care of food, drink, what we're going to wear. We're taking care of, everything around us. We're working our jobs, having an intimate relationship with our spouse. We're doing all these other things, and it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to get bogged down with your workload. I know I personally have an issue with that. It's easy to, just forget to just take a step back and just breathe. Take a step back and connect back to God. And that's what Yom Kippur is all about. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of those things. Food, drink, intimate relations with our spouses. I mean, these are all good things. These are all things that, if done properly, they're good. And they add joy to life, and they make our lives really, quite frankly, much more worth living. But it's too easy to get caught up in them. It's too easy, and many people do, to forget about what's really important in our lives. We were meant to live for so much more. Have we lost ourselves? Shout out to the band Switchfoot for giving me that line. Took me 25 years to get it, but I get it. And that's what I love so much about Yom Kippur. Not Switchfoot, there's no music on Yom Kippur. It's just putting aside all the physical things, putting aside what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're going to wear, being intimate with your spouse, even just the basic comforts of life, even just denying ourselves the very basic physical creature comforts and needs that we as human beings have. That's what I love about it, because it forces us to look to the spiritual. And it forces us to have to look within ourselves and to see what we can improve. So what's it like? So there was a king who sent his son off on a long sea voyage. He filled his cargo hold of the ship with gemstones, and he sent him off to go sell these gemstones in a distant land at a high price. So his son, the prince, goes off on this journey. Somewhere along the way, a storm comes in, blows him off course, bashes his ship against the rocks, but rather than sink the ship, it just puts a hole in the hull. And so the prince gets off of the ship, and he walks around the island looking for, perhaps there are people here to help me, repair my ship so that I can go home at the very least. Dad's going to worry, that sort of a thing. And so he finally finds some people, and he says to them, he tells them exactly what's going on. He says, hey, my ship, I'm shipwrecked. My ship has a hole in the hull, and I need to repair it before I can leave. I can pay you, he says. And they say, oh, well, what can you pay us with? And he says, well, my entire ship is full of gemstones. I was taking them to sell at a distant land, but I can bear to part with a few to pay for the repairs of the ship. And they laughed at him. And they said, no, we don't do that here. You see, here your gemstones are absolutely worthless. There's no value in them whatsoever. The prince is shocked. He says, what do you mean? How could this be? Well, what is valuable? I'm sure that we can come to some kind of an agreement. Maybe I've got something on my ship that you do value. What can I use to barter with? And they said, well, gemstones are everywhere here. They're so common that they're absolutely worthless. They're rocks. We build houses out of them sometimes, but most of the time we clear them out of our fields so that we can grow crops. Crops are what's really valuable to us, and most important of all the crops is the onion. And the guy says, well, I have onions in my ship. I can trade you onions for repairs. And so they go and they look at the onions and they say, listen, that's a substantial amount of onions, but it's not going to be enough to repair the ship. Stay with us for a while, buy a parcel of land, plant some onions, and grow your wealth. And so the prince says to himself, this may be my only way off this rock, so of course I'll do that. And so he did. He traded his onions, some of the onions, for land, building supplies to build a small house to live in, and the rest of it he planted. The rest of the onions he planted. And a year passes by and he finds that not only was he really good at clearing the land and farming, but he actually enjoys farming. These are things that just never occurred to the prince living in the palace, that, hey, I actually enjoy all this hard work. And so the prince determines to himself, I think that I should stay here for a couple of years, build up enough wealth to repair the ship, and then I'll be on my merry way. And so he does. And over the next couple of years, he increases his estate more and more, builds a nice fine house for himself, all the latest gadgets in his house, smart television, smartphones, the house itself is smart, whatever the case may have been. And the time comes that he hires out some men to repair his ship. They repair it, and he's preparing to leave the day after, I should say, that he harvests his crop, and he's going to pay men to maintain his field while he's gone, and he's going to take some back home, just for extra, give him a little bit of spending cash while he's there. So he returns home, finds his way back to home, and he runs into his father, the king, as soon as he lands. And his father says, oh, I'm so glad you're okay. How was your journey? I hope nothing happened. And the prince says, well, Dad, you're not going to believe it, but I was shipwrecked. But not to worry. I had enough wealth that I could build and build and build until eventually I could repair my ship and find my way home. And the king says, well, did you bring back anything from your trip? Did you manage to sell those gemstones? And the prince says, oh, Dad, I got something better than gemstones. Those gemstones, they're worthless by comparison. They're nothing. They're just, it's garbage. You'll want to throw them into the ocean. And the king says, well, what is this? I have to see this. What could be more valuable than gemstones? And so the prince takes him to the cargo hold, and by this point he's been at sea for a couple of weeks, and his cargo is starting to get rancid. At least half of his cargo hold full of onions, red onions, white onions, yellow, green onions, any kind of onion you could imagine. They're starting to rot. And so the king presumably plugging his nose, says, "My son, you've forgotten the whole purpose that I sent you out for." He says, you bring me back worthless weeds. I send you out to bring something valuable back, and you bring me this. This is not what you think it is. You've forgotten somewhere along the way what you were sent out to do. Let me help you rediscover that. We spend so much time on that island, you and I do, all throughout the year. We spend so much effort, working for a house, working for a car, working to get all of our physical needs met. And there's nothing wrong with any of it. Cars, houses, money, food, drink, nothing wrong with any of it. But that's not what we're here for. We've forgotten ourselves somewhere along the way. And every so often, we need to turn back and we need to realize, I've forgotten my entire mission in life. I've forgotten the whole reason that I'm here. I need to focus on what's important. Yom Kippur is returning home and rediscovering what you've forgotten throughout the year. It's coming home and having your Father help reorient you and help guide you back to the path that you should have been on the whole time. Cars, food, money, houses, none of that is inherently bad. We make enough money to provide for our physical needs. Many of us even, make enough money to store up a little bit. It's all very impressive. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But let's not forget about what's valuable. Let's not forget about real value. Yom Kippur is about stop focusing on the physical so much and start focusing on what really matters, the spiritual. Food for thought. Thank you for watching this video. Till next time, Shalom.